Burden, Dad laughed, and the yard cheered. Then he toasted selling Mom's bungalow, my home. Hours later, a new agreement erased me from the business. I swallowed smoke and shame while plates clattered and phones recorded. Filed weeks before Mom died. That was the second slap. Mom taught me the books and the bylaws, and where leverage sleeps. By the next day, my move left everyone frozen. I wouldn't shout. I'd serve in public, where he couldn't spin it. Want to watch a burden carry the whole legacy out from under him? But before we begin, let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. My name is Julie Carver, and I'm 34 years old. I live in my late mother Evelyn's bungalow, running our family BBQ business from the backyard pit while my father Calvin calls it helping out. 6 years ago, I moved home to care for Mom during her final battle, learning every recipe and business detail between the medication schedules and sponge baths. The mesquite smoke still carries her memory, even if Dad started treating me like hired help since she passed last fall. But Mom was always 3 steps ahead. I found her recipe box last week, and the way she smiled in that final photo makes me wonder what else she tucked away for safekeeping. The business ledgers tell a story Dad doesn't want to hear. But let me start from the beginning. Our annual family BBQ always drew a crowd that could fill a small stadium. The late June heat had barely mellowed when cars started lining our street, familiar faces spilling into the backyard where the pit had been smoking since dawn. You know those moments when you can feel something's different in the air? This wasn't just another cookout. I'd been manning the pit since sunrise, rotating racks of ribs and checking temperatures while sweat trickled down my spine. The smell of mesquite wrapped around everything like a familiar blanket. Dad worked the crowd, telling his worn stories about founding the business with Mom, while I juggled tongs and timing and temperature logs. "Julie, we need more sauce on table 3, someone called out. I grabbed fresh bottles, dodging between lawn chairs and card tables. The rhythm was familiar. Check the brisket, rotate the chickens, replenish the beans. 6 years of this dance had taught me every step. Remember when your mama used to run this show? Uncle Jerry's question caught me between tasks. She'd have that clipboard of hers, checking everything twice. My throat tightened. She taught me well. I managed a smile, moving back to the pit. The heat hit my face as I opened the heavy door, and for a second, I could almost hear Mom's voice over my shoulder, teaching me the signs of perfect bark on a brisket. The sun was setting when Dad clinked his beer bottle against the metal prep table. The sharp sound cut through the chatter, and heads turned. He had that look, the one that always came before he'd say something he thought was clever. "Listen up, everybody," his voice carried across the yard. "Got some news to share." I kept working, slicing meat for the late arrivals, but my hands slowed. Something in his tone made my skin prickle. "First off, want to thank you all for coming out tonight." He paused, taking a long pull from his bottle. "And I guess I should thank Julie for helping out, even if she's still hanging around like a teenager." Laughter rippled through the crowd. The knife in my hand suddenly felt heavier. "Truth is," he continued, that familiar mocking edge creeping into his voice. "It's kind of sad, isn't it? Grown woman with nothing to show for herself. Been a burden since she moved back home." More laughter. The sound hit me like hot grease popping against skin. My fingers clenched around the knife handle as memories flashed. Nights spent balancing Mom's medication schedule, days learning every aspect of the business, years of putting my life on hold while he took credit for keeping things running. But he wasn't done. Which brings me to the big news. He raised his beer higher. "Been thinking about expansion. Going solo, taking this business to the next level. And to fund it?" His grin widened. "Going to sell Evelyn's old bungalow. Time to clear out the dead weight, if you know what I mean." The world tilted sideways. The bungalow, Mom's house, my home. The smoke from the pit suddenly felt thick enough to choke on. I stood there, tongs gripped so tight my knuckles screamed, forcing my face to stay neutral while conversations bubbled up around me. Someone laughed. Someone else started asking about expansion plans. But all I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears. "Julie, how about those ribs?" someone called out. I moved on autopilot, pulling racks from the pit, my mind 1,000 miles away from the motions my hands knew by heart. Each "thank you" and "looks great" felt like another small cut. As the crowd's attention drifted back to their plates and conversations, I watched Dad hold court near the prep table, already talking about his vision for the future. My future, apparently, not included. The sun had nearly disappeared when I stepped away from the pit, my eyes drawn to the dark shape of the bungalow against the purple sky. 6 years of memories lived in those walls. 6 years of caring for Mom, of learning the business, of building something I thought would be mine someday. I couldn't sleep. The party's voices still echoed in my head as I yanked empty boxes from the garage, the cardboard dusty and smelling of ancient newspapers. 2 a.m., and there I was, pulling apart the life I'd built in Mom's bungalow. You ever notice how fast you can pack when you're angry? Every drawer I emptied felt like a small victory against Dad's smirking certainty. The kitchen was the hardest. 6 years of shared meals and quiet conversations lived in those cupboards. My hands shook as I wrapped Mom's plates in old dish towels, remembering late-night talks over chamomile tea when the pain kept her awake. The collection of mismatched mugs we'd accumulated during her chemo treatments. The worn wooden spoons that had stirred countless pots of her famous baked beans. "I won't leave anything behind for him to sell," I muttered, though the empty kitchen didn't answer back. When I reached Mom's recipe box, I had to pause. The metal container was dented at one corner, sticky with decades of sauce-stained fingers. Inside, hundreds of index cards documented our family's culinary history, the secret to her coleslaw, the precise timing for smoking a perfect brisket, the blend of spices that made our sauce legendary. But something was off. The cards felt too tight, wedged against something solid hidden in the back. I tugged, and a black binder slid free, its cover unmarked except for LLC documents, typed neatly on a label. My heart jumped. I'd seen Mom with this binder years ago, always assumed it was just business paperwork. But why hide it in her recipe box? The kitchen light buzzed overhead as I spread the contents across the table. Operating agreement, amendments, voting rights. My eyes caught on a paragraph about vesting schedules. I read it twice, then a third time, my pulse quickening. Julie Carver to vest 30% ownership stake upon completion of 5 years active management. 5 years. I'd passed that milestone months ago. The relief hit me like a wave. Dad couldn't erase me. I was already an owner. All those years of helping out weren't just favors. They were building my legal claim to the business. Mom had made sure of it. My phone buzzed on the table, screen lighting up with Dad's name. A text with an attachment. "Since you're probably thinking stupid thoughts, here's reality. Signed and filed weeks before your mother passed. You've got nothing." The PDF loaded slowly, each second stretching like taffy. There it was, an operating agreement amendment dated just before Mom died. My stomach dropped as I scrolled, my name systematically removed from every ownership clause. A lawyer's signature at the bottom made it official, the ink a stark black even through the scan. The hope drained out of me so fast it left me dizzy. I sat there staring at my phone, the smell of smoke still heavy in my hair and clothes from the party. The kitchen suddenly felt too small, too warm. Mom's recipe box sat open on the table, its contents scattered like evidence at a crime scene. How could he have known to do this? Had he found the binder first? Had Mom been too sick to realize what she was signing? The questions piled up, each one heavier than the last. My fingers traced the lawyer's signature. Something about it nagged at me, but my tired brain couldn't focus. The clock on the microwave blinked 3:47 a.m., and I was sitting in a half-packed kitchen, surrounded by the ghosts of promises and the sharp reality of betrayal. I reached for my phone again, scrolling through contacts until I found Priya from the community kitchen. She'd mentioned being a paralegal once, hadn't she? My thumb hovered over her name. It was the middle of the night, but this couldn't wait until morning, not with Dad moving so fast to cut me out. The text he'd sent still glowed on my screen, smug and certain. I looked at Mom's recipe box, then at the LLC binder with its hidden promise of security. She wouldn't have left me unprotected. There had to be something I was missing. I waited until the sky started to pale before calling Priya. The kitchen counter was littered with coffee grounds I'd spilled trying to keep myself awake, and my hands still trembled from the mix of caffeine and anger. She answered on the second ring. "Julie? Everything okay? I need your legal brain. Can you come over? I'll make fresh coffee." There was a pause, then rustling sheets. "Give me 20 minutes." The sun was just breaking over the horizon when Priya's compact car pulled up. She looked surprisingly put together for dawn, her black hair neatly braided, though I caught the glint of yoga pants under her blazer. She carried 2 coffee shop cups and a leather messenger bag. "Brought reinforcements. she said, handing me one of the cups. Now tell me what's worth missing my morning run. I spread everything across the kitchen table. The LLC binder, Dad's text with the amendment, even Mom's recipe box. Priya settled into a chair, glasses perched on her nose, and began methodically sorting through the documents. The kitchen filled with memories of Mom showing me how to measure spices in this same spot, her hands steady even when the cancer made the rest of her shake. I gripped my coffee cup tighter. Okay, Priya said finally, tapping the original LLC agreement. This is solid. Your vesting schedule is clear, and you've more than met the requirements. She turned to Dad's amendment. This is garbage. My head snapped up. What do you mean? Basic corporate law. You can't just remove a vested member without their consent. Even if your mom signed this, it's not valid without your signature. Priya's eyes sparkled behind her glasses. And these bylaws? They're beautiful. There's a provision for emergency meetings with just 24-hour notice. The first real hope I'd felt in hours bloomed in my chest. So I could call a meeting. Better than that, you could force one. Your 30% gives you... My phone cut out mid-sentence. The screen went black, then flashed a no-service message. What the... I tried rebooting it. Nothing. Priya's phone lit up. Julie? You might want to see this? She turned her screen toward me. There in the family group chat, the one I'd just been kicked out of, was a message from Dad. Sad to report Julie's been caught stealing family secrets and business documents. Had to terminate her phone and building access for security. Please don't share any business info with her. Getting lawyers involved. My stomach lurched. The betrayal burned worse than any grease splash I'd ever taken from the pit. He's lying, I whispered, though Priya hadn't asked. Those documents were Mom's. Of course they were. Priya was already typing on her laptop. And we're going to prove it. But first, she spun the screen toward me. We need to serve notice of that emergency meeting. Your dad's moving fast, which means he's scared. We just need to figure out how to make this meeting count before he can do more damage. I stared at Mom's recipe box, at the careful way she'd hidden the LLC binder inside it. She'd known this day might come. She'd left me tools to fight back. My hand stopped shaking. Okay, I said, pulling Priya's laptop closer. Let's do this. The smell of brewing coffee mixed with the lingering smoke in my clothes as we worked. Outside, the pit would need tending soon. The daily routine I'd managed for years while Dad took the credit. But for the first time since Mom died, I wasn't heading out there to be his helper. I was fighting for something bigger. We'll need a printer, Priya said, checking items off on her fingers. And a notary. And to figure out how to serve notice when you're locked out of everything. Through the kitchen window, I could see the office where Dad would be arriving soon, probably already planning his next move to erase me. He thought he had me cornered. But Mom had taught me more than just recipes. She'd taught me to plan ahead, to keep my eyes open, and to never let anyone take what was rightfully mine. I met Priya's determined gaze across the table. Tell me what we need to do first. The next morning hit like a hammer at dawn. I'd barely slept, my mind racing through options while sprawled on Lorraine's couch. The community kitchen wasn't open yet, but Priya had texted to meet her there early. You look like you could use this, Priya said, sliding another coffee across the steel prep table. She'd spread out her laptop and a stack of legal printouts, post-its bristling from the edges. Find anything good? Her smile had that sharp edge I was starting to recognize. Better than good. The county festival permit renewals are due this Thursday. Whoever controls the business at 5 p.m. that day inherits the vendor spot. My heart stuttered. The annual county festival was our biggest moneymaker of the year. 3 days of nonstop crowds and the kind of exposure that kept us booked solid through fall. Dad needs that permit, I said slowly, memories of last year's festival flooding back. The line had stretched around the block, me working the pit while he worked the crowd. He can't run his expansion without it. Exactly. Priya tapped her watch. We have exactly 58 hours to get you in control before that deadline. The kitchen door swung open, and Lorraine swept in wearing one of her signature bright headscarves. Ladies, I brought reinforcements. Behind her came 3 other women from the kitchen's small business program, carrying boxes of supplies. My throat tightened at the sight. Printer, paper, even got my old filing cabinet from home, Lorraine said, setting everything up in the corner she'd cleared. Nobody messes with one of our own. Remember when you thought you had to handle everything alone? The question echoed in my head as I watched them work. These women had seen me come in week after week, helping with their events while learning Mom's recipes. Now they were my lifeline. "We need proof you've been running operations," Priya said, opening a fresh document. "Everything you can remember about schedules, vendors, special orders." I pulled out my personal notebook, the one thing Dad couldn't lock me out of. 6 years of chicken-scratched notes about wood deliveries, meat temperatures, and customer preferences. The women gathered around as I started listing details. "Wait," one of them said, pointing to an entry. "Didn't you cater my daughter's graduation last spring? I dealt with you for everything, never even saw your father." "She handled my nephew's wedding, too," another added. "Designed the whole menu herself." Lorraine squeezed my shoulder. "We're all witnesses, honey. You've got more backup than you know." The morning blurred into afternoon as we built our case. Every invoice I could remember, every event I'd managed, every special recipe I'd developed while Dad glad-handed out front. Priya organized it all into clear, devastating evidence of who really ran daily operations. The kitchen filled with the smell of coffee and printer toner, the steady click-clack of keyboards a counterpoint to the clock ticking in my head. 57 hours, 56, 55. "Look at this," Priya said suddenly, highlighting something on her screen. "The permit renewal requires proof of consistent management. Your father can't claim that without you. You're the one who's been there every day." A burst of hope rose in my chest. Maybe we could actually pull this off. "First thing tomorrow," she continued, "we need to hit the bank. Get copies of every business transaction you've handled. That's our strongest—" My phone buzzed. A text from an old high school friend who worked as a teller. My stomach dropped as I read it. "What?" Lorraine asked, seeing my face. "What's wrong?" I set the phone down carefully, like it might bite. "Dad was just at the bank. He's moved all the accounts to a new LLC." The room went quiet, except for the wall clock's steady tick. 54 hours left, and our best evidence had just vanished into thin air. I lay on Lorraine's couch that night, staring at the ceiling while the hours crept by. 52 now. 51. The sound seemed to echo through the dark, marking time until Thursday's deadline. Until Dad could lock me out forever. Somewhere in Mom's papers had to be something else we could use. Some other piece of ammunition she'd left behind. I just had to find it before time ran out. The bank's glass doors felt heavier than usual as I pushed through them, Priya right behind me with our stack of documentation. Everything we'd gathered through the night was here. Vendor contracts, event bookings, payroll records I'd processed. My whole professional life reduced to paper proof. Remember those Saturday mornings I used to come here with Mom? She'd slip me a lollipop from the counter while she handled the deposits, teaching me about cash flow and credit lines between sweet cherry flavors. Hank Wilburn looked up from his desk as we approached, his silver hair catching the fluorescent lights. "Julie," he said, standing to greet us. "I was hoping you'd come in." "Morning, Hank." I forced a smile. "We need to pull some account records, transaction histories specifically. Everything from the past 5 years." He gestured for us to sit, his usual crisp vest slightly rumpled. "I wish I could help." The sympathy in his voice made my stomach clench. "But your father was here yesterday afternoon." "Let me guess," I said, the words bitter on my tongue. "He moved everything." Hank nodded slowly. "New LLC, clean sweep of all accounts." He glanced at our stack of papers. "I take it you weren't consulted?" "Not exactly." My fingers dug into the armrests. "Can you at least tell me if my name's on anything?" "I'm sorry." He shook his head. "The new accounts are solely under Calvin's control." Priya leaned forward. "What about the original LLC records?" "We have documentation showing Julie's management role." "The original accounts are closed." Hank's eyes met mine, and I saw genuine regret there. "There's nothing left to leverage." The fluorescent light suddenly felt too bright, too harsh. All those hours of gathering evidence, building our case, rendered useless by a single afternoon's paperwork. "I understand if you need a moment," Hank said quietly, rising from his desk. "Take your time." When he stepped away, Priya touched my arm. "We'll find another way." "Will we?" I watched Hank disappear into the back office. "He's systematically erasing me from everything I helped build. Then we'll build something new." Her voice was firm. "But first, we need all the ammunition we can get." The late morning sun hit me like a physical force as we left the bank. Even the familiar stretch of Main Street felt different, hostile somehow, as if the whole town was conspiring against me. The BBQ pit's smoke rose in the distance, a constant reminder of what I stood to lose. "Your mother's papers," Priya said suddenly. "We focused on the business documents, but there has to be more." She was right. Mom had always been meticulous, organizing everything from recipes to tax returns. And she'd known Dad better than anyone, known exactly what he might try to pull. That night, I used my key to slip into the bungalow. Dad hadn't changed the locks yet, probably thought there was nothing left worth protecting. The house smelled of cedar and old paper, Mom's presence still lingering in every corner. I started in her home office, the desk drawer sliding open with a familiar squeak. Bills, warranties, instruction manuals, Mom kept everything. My fingers brushed past folders of medical records, insurance policies, until… there. A manila envelope I'd never noticed before, tucked behind everything else. The paper was thick, expensive, with "in event of" written in Mom's careful hand across the front. My heart picked up speed as I pulled it free. The envelope was still sealed, the glue intact. Whatever was inside, Mom had meant it to stay hidden until it was needed. I held it up to the desk lamp, trying to make out the contents through the paper. Something about a foundation trust? The words were too blurred to read clearly. The clock on the wall showed 9:47 p.m., 43 hours until the permit deadline. Just opening this envelope felt like crossing a line, like finally declaring war. But hadn't Dad already done that? Hadn't he drawn first blood at the BBQ in front of everyone we knew? I reached for the letter opener in Mom's pen cup, its brass handle cool against my palm. The blade slid under the envelope's flap, and I paused, just for a moment. The letter opener sliced clean through the envelope. Inside, I found a single sheet of paper with Mom's email address and password. That was it? My hands shook as I logged into her account on the ancient desktop computer, the one she'd insisted on keeping even when Dad wanted to throw it out. The inbox was overwhelming. 6 years of emails stretched back like a digital time capsule, Mom's whole life preserved in subject lines and attachments. The scent of her favorite lemon hand cream seemed to drift up from the keyboard as I scrolled, remembering how she'd sit here for hours, meticulously organizing everything. "Come on, Mom," I whispered. "Where did you hide it?" I found the answer in a folder labeled Trust JC. An email from 3 years ago caught my eye, sent to a legal document service. The subject line read, "Escrowed letter of transfer, final version." My mouth went dry as I opened the attachment. The document was dense with legal language, but certain phrases jumped out like neon signs. Transfer on death provision. 51% controlling interest. Conditional upon completion of 2,000 verified caregiving hours. I pushed back from the desk, my heart hammering against my ribs. 2,000 hours? I'd logged triple that just in the first year after moving home. Every bath, every medication schedule, every middle-of-the-night emergency, Mom had been documenting it all. "You clever woman," I breathed, scanning further down the page. You knew he'd try this." The trust was ironclad. Dad couldn't touch it, couldn't override it, couldn't make it disappear with fancy paperwork. This was my mother's final gift, and my chance to take back everything he'd tried to steal. But then I hit paragraph 6, and my victory lap screeched to a halt. Trust activation requires 1. Signature of the foundation director or authorized deputy, and 2. Public announcement of transfer at designated community event, county festival, to ensure transparent transition of business interests. The festival, 3 days away. The same festival where Dad was planning to debut his solo expansion, where he'd be surrounded by his crowd of supporters, controlling every microphone and every moment. Priya answered on the first ring. "Julie, it's almost midnight." "I found it." The words tumbled out. Mom left me controlling interest. 51%. It's all here, it's legal, it's… Slow down. Start from the beginning. I explained about the email, the trust, the hours I'd logged. "But there's a catch. We need the foundation director's signature, and it has to be announced at the festival." "The festival?" She was fully awake now. "That's perfect timing for the permit deadline, but Dad will never let me near that stage." I rubbed my temples. "He's probably already got security briefed to keep me out." "Who's the foundation director?" Priya asked. "Maybe we can set up a meeting tomorrow." I scanned the document again. Arthur Chen, but Priya… My stomach dropped as I remembered a detail from last week's community newsletter. He's at a conference in Singapore, won't be back until next Monday. The silence stretched between us. All that power, sitting right there in black and white, and I couldn't access it because one man was halfway around the world. Wait, Priya's voice sharpened. The document says Foundation Director or Authorized Deputy, right? Yeah, but Marcus Dunn. She said it like she was revealing a royal flush. He's the Deputy Director. He's been handling all the local trust activations while Arthur's away. Hope flared in my chest. Do you know him? Better. I notarized his house closing last month. He's by the book, but he's fair. If we can get to him with the right documentation... I looked at the trust agreement again, at Mom's signature at the bottom. She'd thought of everything. The hours, the timing, even the public announcement to prevent Dad from burying it in paperwork. First thing tomorrow? I asked. I'll call his office as soon as they open. Priya paused. Julie, your dad's going to fight this. Hard. The festival's his big moment. I know. I touched the computer screen, right over Mom's email signature. But he's not the only one who knows how to fight. Morning hit like a shot of espresso. I'd barely slept, spending half the night organizing documents and the other half jumping at every creak in the bungalow's old walls. You know that feeling when your whole future hangs on one signature? Yeah, that kind of night. Priya arrived at 7, armed with her paralegal precision and enough coffee to fuel an army. We spread everything across my kitchen table. The trust document, my caregiving logs, Mom's notarized letter, even old text messages proving I'd been running operations. Marcus is thorough, Priya said, sorting papers into neat stacks. He'll want to verify every detail before he signs anything. My hands shook slightly as I reached for my coffee. What if he says no? He won't. She adjusted her glasses, giving me that steady look that had gotten me through countless volunteer shifts at the kitchen. But we need to be ready for his questions. Walk me through the hours again. I closed my eyes, remembering those long days and longer nights. The smell of antiseptic mixed with Mom's lavender lotion, the quiet beep of medical equipment. 2,000 hours was the requirement. I logged 7,412, every minute documented in these journals. Remember when your mom used to check your homework before a big test? That's how Priya checked our presentation. We practiced our pitch until it flowed like water, anticipated every possible question. By 10, we had 3 copies of everything, organized in color-coded folders. Your father's probably at the pit by now, Priya said, peering through my blinds. We should move while he's busy with the lunch rush. I nodded, gathering our papers. That's when my phone buzzed. A community alert. My heart nearly stopped until I read it. Arthur Chen, Foundation Director, extends international conference stay through next week. They're announcing it publicly now, I said, showing Priya. If Dad sees this, he won't think of Marcus, she finished. Not if we move fast. We loaded everything into Priya's car, parked 2 blocks away. No sense risking Dad spotting my truck leaving the neighborhood. The air felt heavy, thick with approaching rain as dark clouds gathered overhead. Marcus keeps office hours at the community center on Wednesdays, Priya said as we drove. He should be there until 4. I checked my watch. 11:30. What if someone tips off Dad that we're meeting with the foundation? Already thought of that. She smiled. Told the receptionist we're discussing a new women's shelter initiative. Not exactly a lie. Your training stipend plan counts. You know those moments when you realize just how much thought someone's put into helping you? That's when it hit me. Priya had probably slept even less than I had, planning every detail. We parked in the back lot of the community center. Through the windshield, I watched people hurrying inside as the first few raindrops started falling. The air had that electric feel that comes right before a storm. Ready? Priya asked, reaching for her briefcase. I took a deep breath, thinking of Mom. She'd planned this escape route for me years ago, hidden it in plain sight until I needed it most. Now it was my turn to make it count. Ready, I said, just as thunder rolled overhead. We stepped out into the growing storm, drops hitting the pavement around us. My folder was clutched tight against my chest, protected from the rain. Inside those pages was everything. My future, Mom's legacy, the business we'd built together. All we needed now was one signature to make it real. The wind picked up as we reached the door, carrying with it the faint smell of smoke from Dad's pit across town. He'd be there now, tending his fires, probably planning his festival speech, having no idea what was coming. Priya held the door, and we stepped into the fluorescent brightness of the community center lobby. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. The storm was breaking outside, but in here, everything was quiet, controlled, ready. This was it. Our one shot at making everything right. The rain hammered against the windshield as Priya navigated through traffic. Every red light felt like an eternity, each delay eating into our precious time. I clutched the folders to my chest, double-checking the contents for the 100th time. Construction ahead, Priya muttered, braking for a line of cars. They picked today of all days to tear up 5th Street? I checked my phone again. Still no service. Dad's move to cut me off meant I couldn't even track if he was making moves against us. The thought of him selling the bungalow while we sat in traffic made my stomach churn. Remember those summer thunderstorms when Mom and I would sit on the screened porch, counting seconds between lightning and thunder? The weight felt just as electric now, but there was no counting to make it easier. We should have taken Marshall Avenue, I said, watching the wipers fight against the downpour. Too late now. Priya drummed her fingers on the steering wheel. Look, there's the detour sign. The delay cost us 20 minutes. By the time we pulled into the community center parking lot, my nerves were shot. Water dripped from my hair as we hurried inside, protecting our precious documents. The receptionist pointed us down a hallway lined with community bulletin boards. Each step echoed against the linoleum, mixing with the distant sound of rain against windows. My heart nearly stopped when I saw a familiar truck in the parking lot through a window, but it was just another white pickup, not Dad's. Marcus's office door was open, his tall frame bent over a desk covered in papers. He looked up as we entered, professional but approachable in his button-down shirt. Priya? He nodded, then turned to me. You must be Julie Carver. Yes, thank you for seeing us on short notice. He gestured to the chairs across from his desk. Priya mentioned this was time-sensitive. Something about a trust activation? We laid out our case, the transfer document, Mom's letter, the caregiving logs. Marcus reviewed each page methodically, asking clarifying questions about dates and signatures. The clock on his wall seemed to tick louder with each passing minute. The documentation is thorough, he said finally. But there's one thing missing. My heart sank. What? We need a notarized affidavit from someone who can verify your caregiving hours. The logs are detailed, but for a transfer of this magnitude, we need third-party confirmation. By when? Priya asked, her voice steady, even as I felt my hope wavering. Marcus checked his calendar. The festival starts at noon tomorrow. For this to be valid for the public announcement, I'd need it by 10 a.m. The neighbor who'd helped with Mom's physical therapy, the hospice nurse who'd trained me, the pharmacy tech who'd filled her prescriptions. Names started flowing through my mind. We can get it, I said, already reaching for my phone before remembering it was useless. Use mine, Priya offered, pulling out her cell. One more thing, Marcus added, his expression serious. The affidavit needs to specifically confirm you provided care for at least 2,000 hours. Anything vague won't hold up if challenged. I nodded, thinking of Mrs. Peterson next door. She'd kept a careful eye on Mom's house whenever I had to make supply runs, marking down my comings and goings in her little notebook. She was exactly the kind of detail-oriented witness we needed. The notary at Western Union is open until 8, Priya said, checking her phone. If we can get someone to meet us there, I'll have my assistant prepare the affidavit template, Marcus offered. You can pick it up in 10 minutes. Outside, the rain had finally let up, but the sky remained dark with clouds. Priya was already dialing numbers as we walked to the car. Mrs. Peterson, this is Priya, from Julie's community kitchen crew. We need your help with something important. I slid into the passenger seat, my mind racing through backup plans in case Mrs. Peterson couldn't help. The hospice nurse had moved to Phoenix. The pharmacy tech only worked weekends. Each alternative felt shakier than the last. Priya covered the phone with her hand. She's home. Says she still has all her notebooks from that time. A glimmer of hope. Now we just had to get the affidavit drafted, signed, notarized, and back to Marcus before 10 tomorrow morning, and somehow keep Dad from finding out what we were doing. The clock on Priya's dashboard read 3:47 p.m., less than 20 hours to pull this off. Ready to make some house calls? Priya asked, starting the car. I took a deep breath, thinking of all those hours spent caring for Mom, every minute now hanging on someone else's memory and signature. Let's go. Thursday afternoon hit like a wall of summer heat. 3 notarized affidavits sat in my folder: Mrs. Peterson's meticulous records, the hospice coordinator's signed statement, and a detailed letter from the church volunteer coordinator who'd organized Mom's meal train. Together, they painted an ironclad picture of my caregiving hours. Priya and I rushed back to Marcus's office, the clock on her dashboard showing 4:35 p.m. The memory of Mom teaching me to time the brisket flashed through my mind. Always watch the clock, Julie. Minutes make the difference between tender and tough. We found Marcus reviewing the final paperwork, his desk neat except for our documents. My hands were trembling as I placed the affidavits in front of him. "Everything appears to be in order," he said, scanning the pages. Each second he spent reading felt like an eternity. The wall clock ticked to 4:40 p.m. "Please," I whispered, more to myself than anyone else. Marcus reached for his pen at 4:42 p.m. The scratch of his signature across the paper was the sweetest sound I'd heard in months. He pressed his notary seal into the corner, making it official. "The trust is now activated," he said, handing me the complete packet. "Good luck at the festival." Relief flooded through me as we hurried to Priya's car. The festival grounds were only 10 minutes away. We had time. We could make it. But you know how it goes when things seem too smooth, right? The security checkpoint at the festival entrance was my first clue something was wrong. The guard checked his list twice, frowning at my name. "Sorry, Ms. Carver, you're not authorized for stage access." "That's impossible. I'm a scheduled speaker." I pulled out the vendor permit paperwork, but he shook his head. "New orders came through 20 minutes ago, direct from Calvin Carver." Of course. Dad had thought of everything. The festival crowd moved around us in waves of laughter and chatter, the scent of various food vendors' smoke mixing in the air. From here, I could see the main stage where the announcements would happen. Where I needed to be in, I checked my phone. Less than 15 minutes. "He can't do this," I said, my voice tight. "We have the legal right." "Julie." Priya touched my arm, her expression focused. She started digging through her bag, muttering under her breath. "I knew we might need... Where is it? Got it." She pulled out a worn county manual, flipping to a marked page. My pulse was pounding so loud I could barely hear the music from the stage. "Here," she said, pointing to a highlighted section. "County sponsorship rules. All permitted vendors have the right to make public announcements during their designated slots. They can't legally block you." I looked at my watch. 4:52 p.m. The deadline was bearing down like a freight train. The security guard leaned over to read the manual. I could see the moment he registered the implications. His eyes widened slightly. "Give me a minute," he said, reaching for his radio. "Need to check something with the event coordinator." Every second felt like glass under my skin. The festival crowds continued to mill around us, completely unaware of the drama unfolding. A child ran past with a barbecue-stained napkin. The sound system crackled with a sound check. I caught a glimpse of Dad near the stage, talking to someone official-looking. He hadn't spotted us yet. The trust activation papers felt heavy in my hands. 4:56 p.m. The security guard was still on his radio, his expression unreadable. Priya kept the manual open to the relevant page, her finger firmly planted on the rule that could save everything. 4:57 p.m. The crowd noise seemed to fade away, replaced by the rush of blood in my ears. All those years of work, of caring for Mom, of building the business, everything hung on the next few minutes. Priya started flipping through her bag again, probably looking for backup documentation or another angle we could use. I watched the second hand sweep around my watch face, each tick bringing us closer to the deadline that would determine everything. The security guard's radio crackled. "Let me get the head of security down here." I checked my watch again. 4:58 p.m. My throat felt as dry as mesquite chips before they catch fire. Remember how time used to crawl during those long nights when Mom needed medicine every hour? This was worse. The festival sounds warped around us. Children laughing, vendors calling out, music drifting from the stage speakers, while we waited in this bubble of tension. A tall woman in a black polo shirt strode toward us, walkie-talkie in hand. The name tag read, "Martinez, head of security." "What seems to be the issue?" she asked. "All business." Priya stepped forward, county manual open. "Ms. Martinez, under Section 7.3 of the County Festival Guidelines, all permitted vendors retain the right to make public announcements during designated time slots." Her finger traced the text as she spoke. "Ms. Carver here is a legally registered vendor representative. Denying her stage access violates county ordinance. Martinez took the manual, squinting at the fine print. I could smell barbecue smoke from Dad's booth, the familiar scent now making my stomach clench. Your father indicated you're no longer affiliated with the business, Martinez said, glancing up at me. I have documentation proving otherwise. My voice came out steadier than I felt. I held up the trust papers, fresh ink still gleaming. Signed and notarized less than 20 minutes ago. Martinez looked between the papers and her watch. The crowd noise swelled as more people gathered near the stage, waiting for the vendor announcements to begin. Look, Priya said, her tone professional but urgent. You have two options. Let Ms. Carver make her scheduled announcement, or we file a complaint that could jeopardize the festival's permit renewal. Your choice. You know those moments when everything hangs by a thread? When you can almost hear the universe holding its breath? Martinez's radio squawked. 5 minutes to vendor announcements. She handed the manual back to Priya. If anything goes sideways, it's on you. She turned to the security guard. Let them through. The barrier lifted. My legs felt wooden as we climbed the stage steps, the metal treads clanging under our feet. The late afternoon sun hit me full in the face, along with the mingled aromas of a dozen food vendors' offerings. From up here, I could see the whole festival spread out, the crowds, the booths, the smoke rising from countless grills. Dad's booth was empty. 2 minutes, the stage manager called out. Priya squeezed my arm. You've got this, she whispered, then moved to the side of the stage. I approached the microphone, my heartbeat drumming in my ears. The trust papers were solid in my hands, but my palms were sweating. How many times had I watched Mom handle the festival announcements, her voice warm and confident as she promoted our family business. The crowd noise dimmed slightly as the MC stepped up. Next up, we have an announcement from Second Chance Smokehouse, formerly Carver's BBQ. A commotion erupted at the bottom of the stage steps. Dad's voice cut through the general murmur. She has no authority to speak for this business. I gripped the microphone stand, my knuckles white. The smell of smoke was stronger now, carried on the wind, and with it came a flash of memory. Mom teaching me how to tend the pit, saying, "Patience, Julie. The fire knows what it's doing." Dad was pushing through the crowd, his face red with fury. The security team moved to intercept him, but he kept coming. The MC looked uncertainly between us. Whenever you're ready." I leaned toward the microphone, my mouth dry. The deadline was seconds away. Everything, the business, Mom's legacy, my future, balanced on what I said next. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began. The crowd's attention swung toward me like a compass finding north. Dad reached the first step, security right behind him. "I'm Julie Carver, and I have an announcement about the future of—" Dad's voice boomed from below. "Stop her, she's trying to steal—" The sound system squealed with feedback, cutting him off. When it cleared, hundreds of faces stared up at me, waiting. The clock on the festival tower clicked to 4:59 p.m. I took a breath and opened the trust papers. "My name is Julie Carver," I repeated, my voice growing stronger, "and as of 4:42 p.m. Today, I am the majority owner of Carver's BBQ, with 51% voting rights through an irrevocable transfer on death trust established by Evelyn Carver." I held the papers high, letting the festival lights catch the fresh notary seal. You could have heard a pin drop in that moment. Even the sizzling from the food stalls seemed to pause. "This trust," I continued, "was activated upon verification of over 2,000 documented caregiving hours during my mother's illness, and has been properly executed by the Foundation's deputy director." A ripple went through the crowd. I saw phones coming up, recording. Dad froze halfway up the steps, his face shifting from rage to something else. Disbelief, maybe, or fear. "Furthermore," I said, my heart hammering but my voice steady, "I have here a series of documents that require immediate attention." Priya stepped forward, manila envelope in hand. The security guards, who'd been watching Dad, now turned to observe this new development. I pulled out the first set of papers. "Calvin Carver," I called out, and my voice didn't shake at all. "You are hereby served with notice of emergency corporate action and temporary restraining order regarding company assets." The crowd erupted in gasps and whispers. Someone near the front actually applauded, setting off a wave that rolled through the audience. Dad's face had gone from red to ash white. "Effective immediately," I continued, "all company accounts are frozen pending review of recent unauthorized transfers and amendments to corporate structure." My phone buzzed in my pocket. The bank's automatic confirmation. The freeze had triggered. Right on cue, I saw Dad fumbling for his phone, probably getting the same notification. A few people in the crowd were typing rapidly on their phones, no doubt spreading the news across social media. Additionally, as majority shareholder, I am calling an emergency vote regarding management structure. I glanced at my watch, 5:01 p.m. The vendor permit was now legally under my control. Would all voting members please raise their hands to indicate their position on immediate removal of Calvin Carver as managing director? Priya's hand shot up first, followed by 3 other shareholders we'd contacted earlier. The votes were decisive, more than enough with my 51%. The motion carries, I announced, my voice carried clearly over the PA system. Management change is hereby effective immediately. That's when I noticed movement at the edge of the crowd. A man in a khaki uniform was making his way toward Dad's booth, clipboard in hand. The county health inspector, right on schedule, responding to the documented concerns I'd filed last week about Dad's recent corners cutting. Dad saw him, too. His face, already pale, went almost gray. He knew what was in those reports. The expired permits, the skipped inspections, the maintenance logs that hadn't been properly kept since he'd locked me out. Ms. Carver, the inspector called out, loud enough for nearby folks to hear. I'll need access to the booth for an immediate compliance review. More phones came up, more murmurs spread through the crowd. Dad finally found his voice. You can't do this, he said, but it came out weak, uncertain. I already have, I replied, not unkindly. The microphone caught every word. The papers are signed. The trust is activated. The vote is recorded. And now, I gestured toward the inspector who was already slipping on latex gloves. We're going to make sure everything's up to code. The crowd's applause started slowly this time, building like a summer storm. I saw people nodding, some smiling, others turning to whisper to their neighbors. Dad stood frozen on the steps, watching as everything he'd tried to take from me shifted firmly into my control. I lowered the microphone, my hands steady. The late afternoon sun caught the notary seal again, making it gleam like Mom's old cast-iron skillet after a good seasoning. Behind me, Priya was already on the phone with our lawyer, confirming the timeline of events. The inspector disappeared into Dad's booth, clipboard raised. A security guard approached Dad. Sir, you'll need to step away from the stage now. Dad stumbled down the stage steps, looking lost without a microphone or an audience. The health inspector emerged from the booth, shaking his head and writing furiously on his clipboard. I didn't need to see the notes. I'd documented every violation myself over the past months, watching Dad cut corners I'd fought to protect. Mr. Carver, the inspector called out. I'm issuing an immediate suspension of operations. He held up a red notice. Multiple critical violations, expired permits, and... He consulted his notes. Evidence of improper equipment maintenance dating back 3 months? The crowd's murmurs grew louder. I saw phones still recording, catching every moment of the collapse I'd warned Dad was coming. He'd called my concerns nagging then. Now they were official citations. You can't, Dad started, but the inspector cut him off. I can, and I am. The booth is closed until full inspection and recertification. He turned to me. Ms. Carver, your separate permit application for Second Chance Smokehouse has been expedited and approved. You're clear to operate under temporary authorization, pending final review next week. More applause broke out. I spotted several regular customers nodding with approval. They'd known me since I was tall enough to reach the grill. They'd watched me work every festival, every weekend, building the reputation Dad had tried to claim as his alone. Calvin, a man in a polo shirt with the county festival logo, pushed through the crowd. What's this about suspended operations? We can't have a non-compliant vendor as our barbecue sponsor. Mark, wait. Dad reached for him, but the festival coordinator stepped back. No, you wait. We've got 3 other vendors asking for your spot already. Consider your sponsorship terminated. He turned to me. Ms. Carver, if you're interested in discussing future opportunities... She's not... Dad tried to interject. I'd be happy to meet next week, I said smoothly. Once we're fully settled. The coordinator nodded and walked away. Dad stood there, watching as his carefully constructed image crumbled. The man who'd called me a burden in front of everyone was now the one without a business, without sponsors, without authority. I felt no joy in his defeat. only a quiet satisfaction that justice had finally balanced the scales. Priya appeared at my elbow. "The temporary permit is active," she said. "We can open as soon as you're ready." I nodded, thinking of Mom's old recipe box. "Give me an hour to set up." The next 60 minutes passed in a blur of purposeful motion. While Dad's booth was sealed with official tape, I opened our new space with help from the community kitchen volunteers. The old signs came down, new ones went up. Second Chance Smokehouse gleamed in fresh paint above the counter. My first customer was Mrs. Rodriguez from 3 streets over. She'd brought me soup when Mom was sick. "What'll it be?" I asked, tongs ready. She smiled. "The usual, Julie," and she laid extra cash on the counter. "Put the change in that training fund you mentioned. It's time more women learned the business properly." I separated out the donation, adding it to the envelope marked Women's Training Stipend. By sunset, that envelope was thick with contributions from customers who'd watched me grow up working the pit. As the festival crowds thinned, I took a moment to complete one final task. I lifted Mom's cast iron skillet, the one she'd taught me to season when I was 12, and hung it carefully above the register. The last rays of sun caught the polished surface, making it shine like a medal of honor. Priya came to stand beside me, admiring the display. "Your mom would be proud," she said softly. "She knew," I replied, touching the smooth iron surface. "She knew I'd need proof someday, not just of legal ownership, but of all the work I'd done, the hours I'd logged, the skills I'd learned." I smiled at the memory of Mom's meticulous record-keeping. She made sure I had both. The skillet caught another gleam of light, and I remembered all the meals it had helped create, all the lessons it represented. The burden, as Dad had called me, had learned to carry not just herself, but an entire legacy. Everything else, respect, recognition, rightful ownership, had followed. I picked up my tongs, hearing the first evening customers approach. There was work to do, and this time, I'd do it on my own terms. I believe stories like this find us for a reason. If this one touched you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day. And tomorrow's might be the one your heart's been waiting for.